Okay, so this whole thing is honestly still eating at me. And I need to tell someone what really happened because everyone at that place made me out to be this crazy person when I was literally just trying to protect myself. I'm Tiffany, I'm 24, and what went down at my last job was complete bull. So 3 months ago, I got hired at this technical consulting firm. The job posting was super vague about what the actual work involved, but during the interview, they acted desperate to fill the position. I figured I could pick it up as I went along. That's what on-the-job training is for, right? Plus, I'm a quick learner when people actually bother to teach me things properly. My first day, this guy Randy comes over being all helpful and friendly. He's 29, seems decent enough, and starts explaining all these complicated computer systems that honestly made zero sense. Everyone else was acting annoyed that they had to deal with a new person. But Randy was different. He actually took time to show me stuff multiple times without making me feel stupid. But I could tell right away some people had issues with me getting attention. Especially this girl Jasmine, who kept shooting me these looks whenever Randy would help me with something. Like, excuse me for being trainable and friendly? Maybe if you weren't walking around with that attitude all the time, people would want to help you too. It was pretty obvious she was jealous because I'm young and actually put effort into how I look. Unlike some people there who seemed to roll out of bed, the work was way harder than they made it sound. They expected me to know all this technical stuff that wasn't even mentioned when they hired me. I spent most days completely lost while everyone acted like everything was obvious. Randy was literally the only person willing to actually explain things instead of just telling me to figure it out myself or read some useless manual. Randy would bring me coffee when he got some for himself, which was just normal courtesy, but I could see how that bothered certain people. Jasmine would make these comments like, "Oh, Randy's being helpful again," with this tone that was so transparent. Like, girl, if you have something to say, just say it, instead of being passive-aggressive. I had to stay late most nights because I couldn't finish everything during regular hours, and Randy would often stay too to help me catch up. That's when I started noticing he would stand pretty close when showing me things on the computer, and sometimes our hands would touch when we were both reaching for papers. At the time I didn't think much of it, but looking back, it was definitely intentional. He also started asking personal questions about my life outside work. Where I lived, if I had a boyfriend, what I did for fun. I thought he was just being friendly, but guys don't usually ask those kinds of questions unless they're interested. And he would always offer to walk me to my car when we worked late, saying it wasn't safe for me to go alone. The more time we spent together, the more I noticed he would find excuses to touch my shoulder or arm when explaining things. He would lean in really close and I could smell his cologne. When other people were around, he acted more professional, but when it was just us, he was definitely more relaxed and flirty. When I mentioned having trouble with some software, he offered to come in on a Saturday to give me extra training. That seemed like a lot for just a coworker, especially giving up weekend time. When I thanked him for being so helpful, he said, "Well, I want to make sure you succeed here," with this look that felt more personal than professional. The other women started making comments about how much time Randy was spending with me. I overheard Jasmine telling someone it was interesting that Randy was suddenly so invested in training when he'd never been that hands-on before. She said it with this smirk like she knew something, which was super annoying because what was I supposed to do? Tell him not to help me? Then Randy mentioned he had a girlfriend, but that didn't really change how he acted around me. Guys in relationships flirt all the time. It doesn't mean they don't find other women attractive. If anything, it made me realize he was probably feeling guilty about whatever was happening between us, which is why he brought her up. The whole situation was getting complicated, and I was starting to feel uncomfortable with how much attention he was giving me. It was obvious to everyone that something was going on, even if nothing inappropriate was actually happening. I didn't want people thinking I was sleeping my way through training or whatever, but I really needed his help to do my job. Without Randy explaining things, I would have been completely lost. The training materials were garbage, and nobody else seemed willing to spend 5 minutes helping me understand anything. So I was stuck between needing his help and feeling weird about how personal he was making everything. Looking back, I think Randy was being strategic about when he offered help and when he didn't. Like he was testing to see how dependent I would become on him, or maybe seeing if I would be open to something more than just work. Why else would someone put in that much extra effort for a coworker they barely knew? The whole thing came to a head during my second week, when Randy started setting these weird boundaries that didn't make sense. I asked him to help with a project due the next morning, and he said he couldn't stay late because he had plans with his girlfriend. Fine, but it was the way he said it, like he was making a point to mention her. When I asked about meeting over the weekend to go over stuff I was struggling with, he got all awkward and said he preferred keeping work help during work hours. But that completely contradicted what he'd offered before about coming in on Saturday. It was like he was suddenly trying to create distance after weeks of being super available. I started noticing he would only help me when other people were around, which felt deliberate, like he was making sure there were witnesses or something. When we were alone, he would find excuses to cut conversations short or suggest I ask someone else. Such a different vibe from before. The mixed signals were really confusing and honestly kind of hurtful. I had gotten used to having his support, and suddenly he was acting like helping me was this big inconvenience. I couldn't figure out what had changed, but it felt personal, like maybe his girlfriend had said something about the time he was spending with me. I tried asking him directly if everything was okay, and he gave me this response about wanting to maintain professional boundaries, which was ridiculous because he's the one who had been crossing those boundaries with all the personal questions and extra attention. Now suddenly, he wanted to be professional? It felt like he was trying to make me seem like the inappropriate one. That's when I started really thinking about everything that had happened and realizing his helpfulness maybe hadn't been as innocent as I thought. The way he would find reasons to touch me, the personal questions, offering weekend time, walking me to my car. It all added up to something that made me uncomfortable. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how unfair the situation was. I was just trying to do my job and learn what I needed to know, and he had made it weird by bringing personal stuff into it. I didn't ask for flirty comments or special treatment. I just wanted proper training like any new employee should get. I talked to my roommate about it, and she immediately said it sounded like he had been testing the waters to see if I would be interested in something more than work. She said guys do that all the time. Act helpful and friendly to get close to women. Then, when they don't get the response they want, they pull back and act like nothing happened. That really opened my eyes to what had probably been going on. Randy had been using his position as my trainer to get closer to me personally, and when I didn't respond to his advances the way he wanted, he started creating distance to protect himself. But that left me in an impossible position where I couldn't get the help I needed. The worst part was that other people had definitely noticed what was happening, but instead of being concerned about the inappropriate dynamic, they were treating it like entertainment. Jasmine and the other women would make comments about Randy's mentoring style that made it clear they knew something unprofessional was going on. I felt stuck in this situation where everyone could see Randy had been crossing boundaries with me, but I would look bad if I said anything. Like people would think I was making trouble or being dramatic. But I couldn't just pretend nothing had happened and continue working in that environment. The breaking point came when I realized I was probably going to get fired if I couldn't improve my performance. And the person supposed to be helping me train had basically abandoned me because I didn't respond to his inappropriate behavior. It felt like I was being punished for not playing along with whatever game he was trying to play. So I went to HR and filed a complaint. Look, I wasn't trying to get Randy fired or anything dramatic. I just wanted there to be a record of what had been happening, so if my performance continued to suffer, there would be an explanation for why I wasn't getting the support I needed to succeed. I told them about Randy asking personal questions, finding excuses for physical contact, offering special attention that seemed to go beyond normal training. I explained how he had been making comments about wanting me to succeed that felt more personal than professional, and how he suddenly pulled back when I didn't respond to his advances. The HR person, Michelle, seemed to take it seriously and said they would investigate. She asked for specific examples and dates, which I provided as best I could remember. I made it clear I wasn't accusing Randy of anything criminal, but that his behavior had made me uncomfortable and was affecting my ability to do my job. A few days later, I got called into a meeting with Randy and our supervisor, Sandra. Randy looked completely shocked when they told him about the complaint. He kept saying he had no idea what they were talking about and that he was just trying to help me learn the job. He seemed genuinely confused, which almost made me feel bad. But then he said something that really got to me. He said he wasn't attracted to me and had never been interested in me romantically. The way he said it was so dismissive and almost insulting, like the idea of being attracted to me was ridiculous. I mean, I know I'm attractive. I get hit on all the time, and guys are usually falling over themselves to help me. That comment made it clear he was lying about his motivations. If he really had just been trying to help me professionally, why would he need to bring up attraction at all? The fact that he felt the need to deny being attracted to me proved that attraction had been part of his thinking, even if he was trying to cover it up now. After that meeting, Randy completely shut down any interaction with me. He would barely make eye contact and only answered direct work questions with short professional responses. It was like he was trying to punish me for speaking up about his behavior. The message was clear. If I was going to complain about his attention, then I wouldn't get any attention at all. The other people in the office started treating me differently too. Jasmine and some others would get quiet when I walked into the break room, and I could tell they were talking about me behind my back. They probably thought I was making trouble or causing drama, but they didn't understand the position Randy had put me in. I tried explaining to a couple other women what had really been happening, but they seemed skeptical. One actually defended Randy, saying he was just a helpful person and that I might have misinterpreted his friendliness, which was so frustrating because these same women had been making comments about his behavior toward me just weeks earlier. It became clear pretty quickly that people were choosing sides, and most were choosing Randy's side. He had been there longer and had relationships with everyone, while I was still the new person struggling to fit in. It felt like a popularity contest I was destined to lose. My work performance got even worse after the complaint because now I had absolutely no support. Randy wouldn't help me with anything, and other people seemed reluctant to step in because they didn't want to get involved. I was basically left to figure everything out on my own, which was impossible given how complex the work was. I started making more mistakes and missing deadlines, which just reinforced everyone's opinion that I wasn't qualified for the job. But they didn't understand that the reason I was failing was because I had been cut off from the training and support I needed. It wasn't my fault that the person responsible for helping me had created this whole mess. Sandra started having more frequent check-ins about my performance, and it was obvious she was building a case for termination. Every mistake got documented. Every missed deadline got noted. I felt like I was being set up to fail, and there was nothing I could do about it. Things got really desperate when I realized I was probably going to lose my job if something didn't change. I had been there almost 3 months, and my performance reviews were getting worse instead of better. Sandra had started having weekly meetings to discuss areas for improvement, which was basically code for, "You're going to be fired soon." So I decided to swallow my pride and ask Randy directly for help. I figured maybe enough time had passed that he would be willing to put the whole HR thing behind us and focus on getting me trained properly. I wasn't asking for anything inappropriate, just basic job training that any new employee should receive. I approached him when he was alone at his desk and asked if he could help me understand a particular system I was struggling with. He looked at me like I had asked him to commit a crime. He said, "I'm not comfortable helping you," and turned back to his computer. Just like that, No explanation, no suggestion of who else I could ask, just a flat rejection. I tried a few more times over the next week, thinking maybe he just needed to see that I was serious about keeping things professional. But every time I asked for help, he gave me the same response. I'm not comfortable. Like I was some kind of threat to him just for asking work-related questions. The other coworkers started noticing that I was having trouble getting help from Randy, and instead of stepping up to assist me, they seemed to think it was funny. I would overhear comments like, "Looks like Tiffany needs to figure things out on her own now," with this smug tone that made it clear they thought I deserved whatever was happening. Jasmine was the worst about it. She would make passive-aggressive comments about how some people expected others to do their work for them, and how real professionals figure things out independently. Easy for her to say when she had been properly trained and didn't have to deal with people sabotaging her learning process. I tried asking other coworkers for help, but they all claimed to be too busy or said the tasks were outside their area. It was obvious they had all decided I was a troublemaker and didn't want to get involved. They probably figured if they ignored me long enough, I would just quit, and they wouldn't have to deal with the drama anymore. The stress was really getting to me. I was spending hours trying to figure out things that should have taken minutes with proper guidance. I was staying late every night trying to catch up, but without understanding the underlying systems, I was just making more mistakes that created more work. By my third month, it was clear I was going to be fired. Sandra had started the formal documentation process, citing my inability to complete tasks independently and my below-average performance metrics. She scheduled a final performance review and told me to be prepared to discuss my future with the company. I knew what that meant. They were going to terminate me and make it seem like it was due to my incompetence, when really it was because I had been systematically denied the training and support that every new employee deserved. The whole thing was a setup from the moment I filed that HR complaint. In the meeting, Sandra told me my employment was being terminated due to my inability to meet basic job requirements. They gave me the standard termination package and had security escort me out of the building, like I was some kind of criminal. I had to pack up my desk while everyone watched, which was humiliating. Randy didn't even look up from his computer when I walked past his desk with my box of belongings. After everything that had happened, he couldn't even acknowledge that a person was losing their job partly because of his actions. The complete lack of empathy or accountability was stunning. I found out later that the company had also reported my false harassment claim to some industry database that tracks problematic employees. So not only was I unemployed, but future employers in the field would be able to see that I had been flagged as someone who makes trouble. Looking for new work became a nightmare. Every application that got to the reference check stage resulted in rejection. I had to start applying for jobs completely outside my field, which meant taking a huge step backward in terms of salary and career prospects. I ended up working retail for barely above minimum wage. I had to move back in with my parents because I couldn't afford rent on my new salary. The whole experience completely changed how I viewed the working world. I had always believed that if you worked hard and tried to do the right thing, you would be successful. But what happened to me proved that workplaces are really just popularity contests where people in power protect each other. I checked Randy's social media occasionally, and of course everything was going great for him. He got promoted within 6 months of my termination and was posting about work achievements. Meanwhile, I was folding clothes at a department store and getting yelled at by customers. The worst part was seeing posts from my former coworkers congratulating Randy on his promotion and talking about what a great mentor he was. These were the same people who had witnessed the inappropriate way he treated me, but they were all happy to pretend it never happened now that I was gone. Even now, almost a year later, I still get angry thinking about how everything went down. I tried to do the right thing by reporting behavior that made me uncomfortable, and instead of being protected, I was punished and ultimately forced out. The system is completely broken if speaking up about workplace issues results in the victim being destroyed while the perpetrator gets rewarded. People act like there are consequences for men who behave inappropriately at work, but my experience proved that's not true. If anything, the consequences fall on the women who dare to speak up about it. Randy faced no real accountability. If anything, my complaint probably made him look like a victim who had been unfairly accused. I still believe I did nothing wrong by filing that complaint. Randy's behavior was inappropriate, and the way he retaliated against me afterward proved that he knew it. No one should have to choose between tolerating uncomfortable workplace dynamics and losing their job. But that's exactly the choice I was forced to make. The fact that I'm working retail now while he's getting promoted just shows how unfair the whole system is. But I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself, even if it cost me everything. At least I know I tried to do the right thing, which is more than I can say for anyone else involved in that situation.